Welcome, everyone. Erik Roth here, shamanic astrologer. Going to take a look at another event in February of 2025 as we kind of ramp up to the big alignments of March and April of this year, 2025. So we're going to be taking a look at Mars again. I mentioned I did another video in January about the cycle we're now in of the Mars synodic cycle that began January 15th of 2025 and goes on for 25 months. But we're going to take another dive into this, and we're going to talk about like some particular alignments that are taking place with Mars and how important that is to tune into. So just a moment here, we'll proceed with the presentation. All right, this is episode 63 of Signs, Planets, and Stellar Rhythms. This is the Mars cycle part 2, and we're going to look at Mars stationing direct as sort of the centerpiece of this, and some of the alignments that come before and especially that come after Mars stations direct. So I'm your host, Erik Roth, practicing shamanic alchemical astrology. And we're going to review all of this and what that means for us here. And if you happen to have, on a personal level, there's definitely some things that you could work with too that I'm going to share about during this presentation for episode 63. All right. So, so we'll revisit the Mars cycle. Mars will station direct in the sign of Cancer on February 23rd. History of the Mars cycle, Mars Cancer cycles. This is a big piece of this presentation because this plays a role in the expression of the archetype of Cancer and how important it is for the next couple of years. This will also tie in, as an example, to Jupiter moving into the sign of Cancer in June of 2025. We're going to look at the themes of astrological Cancer and then the Mars timeline at the end of this episode through the beginning of May. Let's look at that. Okay, so let's revisit this. It's not necessarily that you have to watch the first video of Mars cycle, but it's encouraged because there's some basic information about the phases of Mars that you may want to tune into. But in this case, I'm going to be talking about this Mars cycle, particularly about Mars stationing direct and how that plays a role in the overall Mars cycle. This cycle began, again, January 15th, 2025 at 26 degrees, 12 minutes Cancer. So just about a month prior to the recording of this particular video here on February 10th, 2025. Cancer, anytime Mars and the Sun go into opposition, this starts an entirely new cycle. And Cancer is the primary archetypal expression of the masculine during this. So it sets that sort of that overtone or as some people call it, overstory of the Mars synodic cycle going forward. The themes of Mars in this cycle can relate to the sign of Cancer. So this is about Cancer energy is about family structures, dynamics, our continuing evolution from a tribalistic, nationalistic culture to more of a global humanity culture. It's also about the fears related to the inclusiveness, exclusiveness polarity, which relate to the tribalistic, nationalistic culture. And the masculine in Cancer is about this action force within us to care about our families, friends, and beyond. It can be through protectiveness, sacrifices, bearing the responsibilities to care and for others, and much more. So the first synodic cycle, or the first video of the synodic cycle, was published on January 6, 2025, and you can look at my YouTube channel for that video, a recent video. And I'll post it on the in the description as well, so you can click on that link after you watch this video here. And Yeah, so Cancer has a lot about it that is about responsibilities and caretaking. And, for example, it also owns up to things that if it made a mistake or if it knows it needs to take care of, instead of blaming others or to eschewing any kind of responsibility. It's the one that shows up and actually makes sure it takes care of business in that way. Capricorn Cancer tend to have the stronger elements of responsibility when it comes to the signs of the zodiac. All signs have some senses of that to varying levels, and it depends on the makeup of the chart. But in Cancer's case, it's done through the heart space. It's done through providing. It's done through caring and compassion. Okay, so Mars station direct. Here we go. This is at February 23rd, 2025 at 17 degrees 00 minutes Cancer. So Mars will have completed a 79-day retrograde journey that started December 6, 2024 at 610 Leo. So Mars spent quite a number of months in the sign of Leo prior to it retrograding in the sign of Cancer in January. And then it goes all the way back after 79 days to 17 Cancer on February 23rd. So it goes back a total of 19 degrees from 6 Leo to 17 Cancer. So anytime Mars goes retrograde, it signals the end of one synodic cycle and the beginning of a new one. So halfway in that Mars retrograde, which was January 15th, 2025, that was the center of the Mars retrograde path or transit. And that is also the opposition to the sun. And lastly, it is the point where it starts the synodic cycle, symbolizing the masculine's active force nature, in this case, in the sign of Cancer. So Mars in Cancer represents a focus upon the nurturing, compassionate, and providing qualities of the masculine. Archetypally, it is akin to a parental figure showing up, taking responsibility for those in the family and beyond that need nourishment, protection, and love, but also to some degree in cooperation with the family and working with the family, not necessarily ruling, over the family like a authority figure type of thing. Although there is some of that, particularly when it comes to the children. Mars won't go retrograde again until January 10th, 2027. So it's usually about every 2 years that Mars goes retrograde. 25 months, 26 months, somewhere in that zone that we find retrograde take place. So in this case, between Mars stationing direct and the next time Mars goes retrograde in 2027, that's a total of about close to 23 months. But 25 months after it stationed retrograde prior to 2027. All right, so here's the chart for Mars station retrograde, and this is an interesting chart. We could see at this time on the 23rd that Mars and the Moon are in opposition, and so there's a really strong force, or if you will, around that greater sense of knowledge, wisdom, and responsibility, compassion, caring. There's also a T-square to Chiron. There is Black Moon Lilith energy right in there too. But the Chiron energy plays a role in, and has been since the fall of, or the autumn of 2024, Mars has had 3 squares to Chiron. And I'm going to talk about the third one upcoming here shortly. But Mars and Chiron show up where we have the wounds, the discomforts, the vulnerabilities with the masculine, particularly around the sign of Cancer. And, that can sometimes result in the overburdening of our responsibilities, of giving too much, overprotecting, being like even more like maybe tribal, more nativism type of thing, and more exclusiveness. and kind of almost like uh, a stagnation within the family, and where it's bearing too much weight, and then it ends up crushing itself because it's just overdoing everything and stuck in a certain paradigm, if you will. Um, so that'll be interesting to experience for the moon. By that point, will be in the waning crescent phase. So we'd be able to see it like in the very early morning sky the following day and on the 24th. And but being in the sign of Capricorn really also talks about doing the right thing and showing up where you're really needed to show up, and bringing in the knowledge, the wisdom into this energy of Mars kind of launching itself forward in direct motion as well. So there have been the last two times that there have been a Mars and Cancer cycles that have been closely matching this particular incarnation. Sometimes you can get a Mars in Cancer opposition, that is at a different time, but doesn't closely match the one that you're currently in. So the last two times were 1946 through 48 and 1978 to 80. Again, this is a longer term process. So it isn't just the day that Mars stations direct or the day that Mars is in opposition with the sun. Again, that was back on January 15, 2025. Mars stationing direct February 23rd, 2025. So there's a lot of things around nationalistic tendencies and responsibilities and the definition of family, the definition of the masculine and all of that. But there's also some things about the kind of the reaching out to the world, sort of this more greater, altruism that can sometimes result in Cancer kind of extending itself or evolving beyond just the blood family, for example. So in 46 to 48, I'm primarily listing the first year of that cycle, of the Mars cycle, so 46 and 78. But there's also examples that go into 1947 and to 1948 as well as 1979 to 1980. But in 46 to 48, we had the establishment of the United Nations. The League of Nations was dissolved during that year, and then the United Nations took over at that point. And really, that would be, from an idealistic perspective, like more of a human family type of energy. Sort of the vision of that the United Nations is a body that would help out the world, ideally. Now it's had, so you can call it mixed reviews since it's formed back in 1946 and even today, and various world governments have had issues with it. But it's also been, where is it empowered by the collective nations? Is it being supported by the collective nations in a serious way, or is it something that's just taken for granted? So that's something to think about. Now, this is just after World War II, so some European countries sort of re-sovereignized after World War II, after all the the breakup of the colonial powers, a lot of it in the 1940s and 50s, the breakup of what Nazi Germany used to be after their conquering and then their destruction at the hands of the allies of the U.S., Britain, and Russia, and other countries that participated in that alliance. So countries like Austria, Jordan, Syria, Italy, even the Philippines, America sort of released the Philippines from its territory, and Philippines became a sovereign nation. And then later in 1948, that's when Israel became a sovereign nation in the Middle East. And that's something that is like a whole other topic that I'm not necessarily going to get into, but I will share that there are themes regarding the Middle East with Mars and Cancer in the 1940s, as well as the late 1970s. and of course into today, 2025 to 2027. There was also major women's suffrage movements, including women getting to vote in the nation of Japan. At the collapse of the empire, the Japanese empire, and they became a more of a democratic type of body in the world. Sukarno of Indonesia also helped create a Republic of Indonesia, freeing it from Dutch control by 1949. So it was 1946 when he kind of really started that process. And for good or for ill, he brought forth and helped kick out the Dutch as a colony state, and it became its own independent sovereign nation. You find that a lot during this time. Now, Mars isn't fully responsible for all of this. There are certainly other planetary transits. No cycle operates in a void, but these are themes that certainly have threads into the Mars cycle. And there's another interesting thing that has to do with the recent desire of Trump and the U.S. desiring to purchase Greenland and get back the Panama Canal. Well, and this wasn't really made public during that time, but the U.S. actually offered to buy Greenland from Denmark in 1946. And it was also the establishment of the baby boomers and the American nuclear family, an explosion of birth rates, post World War II. So you had this sort of setup. The cancer energy was really, really strong during that time. And so something to consider is that as we go into this incarnation of the Mars and Cancer cycle, what are those themes showing up as, and what we're going to be looking at in society? 1978 to 80, the gay rights movement, LGBTQ evolution was really ramped up, particularly with Harvey Milk and his becoming supervisor of city of San Francisco, California, and later on getting assassinated as well. But this was also the time when they came up with their flag, the rainbow flag, and a whole wide variety of offshoots that represented a variety of other causes and qualities in the movement of human rights came through during that time. So it was a really, really powerful time, 1978 through 80. The rainbow flag was officially adopted and was flown on June 25th, 1978. The first gay rights bill was signed in San Francisco in 1978, the first city to do that. And but then there was also, I mentioned the Panama Canal. It was during that time, the Panama Canal was voted by the U.S. Senate to let it go to the state of Panama by 1999. So it's interesting that took place, and now we're in a Mars Cancer cycle where the new leadership has decided to maybe bring in the Panama Canal under American control of the United States. So that's something really interesting to watch. And this has a lot to do with this sense of nationalism, this sense of like nationalist expansion, even because it's like you're promoting this one particular vision or vibe, and you are, and sometimes even to an extreme level, conquering, quote, your enemies, whether it be through economics or through military or even both. That's sort of the sense of what you can especially get with sometimes in the sort of the shadow layers of cancer. But then in the sort of the evolution of it, you can get things like the United Nations established, and you can get things like what happened in also 1778. You can get the Camp David Accords, like the peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, which was a very monumental event. Jimmy Carter helped initiate or bring into form, and in combination with the Middle Eastern states. So they signed the peace treaty because had been various wars between Egypt and Israel, particularly since the state of Israel was established back in 1948, or sorry, 48, and the sort of the lead up to what do we the conversation around establishing a state for for Jewish people in their original one of their original homelands. So then there was the this really interesting thing that I didn't know about, but in Jamaica there was something called the One Love Peace Concert in 1978, and Bob Marley united two opposing political parties at the concert. So his work at the concert helped bring together politicians that were originally in opposition and were able to find common ground with each other. And so I found that really fascinating that that happened. And so how like the art of music and what it can bring in, and that we're all one tribe, that, cancer's full evolution is to establish and to connect with, more of a human tribe and with a wide variety of cultures, societies, and beliefs and so forth that can cohabitate with each other without the use of violence or walls, if you will. So again, that's more of this kind of bleeds into a little bit of the Aquarian desire on a mental state of there's no borders. It's that John Lennon song Imagine. But Cancer can get to that point as a vibration, as an archetypal expression. So themes for the 2025 to 2027 period that relate to this Mars and Cancer cycle. I mentioned LGBTQ plus rights, nationalism and international families of nations, but also themes around tribalism and fears of resulting in war, violence, oppression, including refugees. And you see that particularly with the immigration here in the United States and the sort of the reversal of many years of inviting in immigrations or immigrants into their country for many decades, and then suddenly reversing course and deporting those that are here primarily illegally, but also some of them, from what I've been reading, have been taken out that were legal as well. And so this is like it's like either a black and white. Do you invite them all in or you do let them go? There's got to be a happy medium in there and a workaround and negotiation connection, rather than more of this protectionism and this more of this tribal nativism. Cancer is more about really intending to go the opposite direction. However, you can have some of these backslides in Cancer that can go the opposite direction and go into the deeper shadow. And so that's part of what we're having to deal with, not just in the United States, but in our relationships with other countries and other countries and their policies around refugees and immigrants. And so that's going to continue to be a very, very big topic. Redefining family backwards or forwards. So it's like also the rights of women, the rights of minority peoples here in the U.S., the rights of the human rights, civil rights. That's a huge topic here that is connected into this redefinition of family. What does that really mean? And again, I keep talking about that greater global family, ultimate goal for humanity, which could come, in the decades, but ahead. But we're in a major growing pain right now for humanity. And then safety and security and terrorism. That's still going to be a really, really big theme here. And so we'll see. It doesn't mean there's going to be more of this, but the conversations and the issues surrounding that are going to be really front and center during this time as well. So countries that found in previous Mars and Cancer cycles, particularly U.S. relations with these countries. I mentioned Panama Canal and Greenland, but there's also been some major things around the Soviet Union and Russia. I mean, it was essentially post-World War II when the Cold War began between the U.S. and Russia, like completely structuring the world, in a East versus West kind of a situation, and a communist versus capitalism, or aka capitalism / democratic republicanism. So, and those two forces like really getting in opposition with each other during that period. That was also when the time when Russia was developing their first nuclear bomb, atomic bomb, and shortly after the cycle, they were able to test their very first one. So these are things we're going to be looking at also. Um, so here's some cycles that not cycles but dates of the Mars cycle over the next few months that to pay attention to. So I mentioned February 23rd here, Mars stationing direct at 17 Cancer. On March 8th, Mars is conjunct the Moon. And March 26th, 2025, Mars is squaring Chiron. Really, this is the last square between Mars and Chiron, and really tapping into the wounds of the masculine, the wounds of our nature around tribalism or nationalism and nativism and family. Then April 5th, there's another Mars Moon conjunction. And then April 8th is a big date because Mars comes back to the original point that it was at opposition with the Sun back on January 15th. So that starts a whole new phase, phase two, which is sort of the quest phase. And then on April 17th, Mars enters the sign of Leo, trining 0 Aries. So this is something that is really in a major thing as part of the March and April period for humanity into May. And the reason that is because Neptune and Saturn go over that 0 degree mark in Aries this year 3 times, this year into 2026. In between February and May, both Mercury and Venus transit the 0 degree Aries mark 3 times as well. The lunar nodes transited that recently back in January, the 0 degree Aries mark and the 0 degree Libra mark. And so, of course, the sun and the moon, there's an eclipse season that happens at 9 Aries and at 24 Virgo. So they're kind of dancing in between that zone there at 0 Aries, 29 Pisces. This is so Mars transiting that, entering the sign of Leo, trining. This to be the third trine to the 0 Aries piece. The first one was back in the early November period, 2024. The second one was in January of 2025. And now this third one on April 17th. So this is really big that the transmission between Leo and Aries is, I think, really, really big in this time. But 0 Aries in particular, as the start of the zodiac, start of like being the March equinox point where the sun is, and it passes there on there at the March equinox 20th, 21st range. So we have that really strongly activated. So this is a big reason why that March and April period being the center of this situation with all the planets lined up together, and then Mars going over and trining that. So some big stuff coming. And then there's the Sun-Mars square. This is when the sun is setting and Mars is at a 90-degree angle. So to be roughly between the eastern and western horizons in the south at 0 Leo, or sorry, at 1 degrees Leo there. So really close to the point where the sun is just entering the sign of Taurus. And then there's a Mars, the last of the 3 Mars-Pluto oppositions. It takes place on April 26th. This is a very highly charged and powerful point. There's been 2 other ones in let's see, that was in late October, and another one in January, and then here now, April 26th. And then there's on May 3rd, there's a conjunction of the moon. Those are the major alignments that Mars has over the next few months. And so these are dates you want to pay attention to. And if you happen to have any personal points or planets in the sign Cancer or Leo, definitely want to pay attention to these alignments that Mars is going through. But also, I'll be doing a video about March, and I'm going to talk about the Pisces Aries energy. And I've done a lot of chart readings, and especially in recent months, where they've got some personal points or planets in the early degrees of Aries and the late degrees of Pisces. And then the other ones who have people who have late degrees Cancer and early degrees Leo. That is really the epicenter of what's, this first part of this year through April and May time is all about, until we get to June and afterwards, where we start to get into a different territory with Jupiter moving into not only Cancer, but Uranus moving into Gemini in July. So lot to connect with astrologically for us. And on a personal level, you want to just know that there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, and to take care of yourself. And there's going to be a lot of reactive energy out there with some of the Mars transit energy, and to kind of take your time with your thoughts, and to not be quite as reactive, particularly if it's like a reactiveness that might be, you might be expressing like you're projecting your wound out there, reacting from a place of fear or pain. This is a chance to kind of look within and connect within ourselves and see what's happening there, rather than amplifying the tension and the fears that are already out there. So that's something that I want to leave you with. And connecting with Mars in the sky and some of these other planets, it's going to be important. We can talk about all the astrological definitions of these planets, but until you kind of go out there and experience it for yourself, to tune into it and receive what's coming through, then you might get some additional, deeper, more personal insights for yourself, and maybe for others and for the collective as well. So I encourage that for everybody. So thank you all for being a part of this video. Please like and subscribe if you do like this video, and share it with others. You can find me at inspiralnexus.com. And I do also online courses at mystaralchemy.com. And you can learn more about the stars and their role in our lives, working with them on a ceremonial level, experiential level, shamanic level. I do that with Kaylin Castell. And for a living, I also do personal astrological readings, astrocartography classes, and other events in person and online. So be sure and follow me to keep up with my activities. And I have a regular newsletter that you can sign up for at inspiralnexus.com and on social media as well. So take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.